Raj, what's it been like this preseason and fall and preseason and kind of it's always kind of like a big puzzle for you to put together the puzzle. How's the puzzle coming together, I guess?
Yeah, I'm very pleased with the progress of the guys. I mean, going back to the fall, a lot of good things happened. Obviously, the weather's throwing a little wrench in things this spring, but you deal with it, and we're doing things to keep them on track. And fortunately, we have scrimmaged 3 times, so we've done some things. Guys have thrown pins outside, and hopefully looking at the forecast next week, I think maybe we get out again and scrimmage Tuesday, hopefully, and next weekend, is looking good. So we feel good about where we're at on the track of things. And, obviously it's a spirited competition to find out exactly, where those guys are going to line up as far as starters, and looking at some of the bullpen pieces. Obviously, there's major pieces to replace. For me, the challenge to our guys in the fall, bullpen-wise, was, and I challenged them with this: who's going to be Bivin? Who's going to be West? Who's going to be Wyatt if he's not in the bullpen? Who will replace him? Who's going to do Brennan Cut? So there were guys that were really instrumental for us down the stretch that we leaned on a ton. So we're trying to find the guys that can replace those guys, and obviously, we don't have a Patrick Forbes type guy, but there's good experience and talent in the rotation and guys that have made a step forward. So for me, if you look at one thing back in the fall, I would say for me probably the most interesting development for us pitching-wise was the development of our sophomore lefties. That was probably the thing I was pleased with the most in that world. Kaysen Murphy, Aaron England, and you even throw in Tage Davis for me, who I thought made a big move forward on the mound and has a chance to really help us in a key role. So, and the other guys have continued to get better. The Ethan Eberle's, Peter Michael had a really good fall. He's throwing more strikes. So things that certain guys needed to do, we've seen that happen throughout the fall and the spring.
Well, you do have a few guys to replace. I think Dan mentioned that you guys tossed the 5th most innings by freshman pitchers last year. What's it like to have that sort of continuity from last year?
Yeah, obviously, I think it was 240 or 50 plus innings out of that group last year. So they've been in the fire. Experience-wise, that helps them. Obviously, a guy like a Jake Schweitzer had a huge freshman year for us, so you got guys like him back. Eberle, making the move from being a valuable bullpen piece into the rotation, so some great things happen out of that group, and obviously we hope that experience pays big dividends for us this year.
You've always been a guy that let those freshmen come in throughout the season, kind of get their lumps and their learning moments. How big was that for that run last year, that they had those moments to
I think it was huge. It hardens you up, makes you competitive-wise, it creates that edge that you need, especially down the stretch in that environment. And, we all know we had our ups and downs throughout the year, but we also beat a lot of good teams throughout the year and pitched well in a lot of games throughout the year. So, it was great to see it all come together the last month when it meant the most and our guys were their best. So, again, hopefully our guys can lean on that a little bit, and it helps them this coming spring.
You guys, everybody always wants to know who's Friday, who's Saturday, who's kind of thing. We all want to know that, but you guys always have, moved the pieces. You have to you adjust and do that. Is this a year where you could see multiple guys in changing roles as the year goes on?
Yeah, I think as a pitching coach, your hope is going into a season that the rotation will be consistent. You could rely on the same 3 guys, every weekend, and then your midweek guy's a consistent guy, but that rarely does that play out for really any team. So I do like our options. There's a lot of options there that we can plug in, and like I said, I think that competition of where we end up, stacking them up the first weekend is going to go all the way through next weekend. So some of those guys are going to match up with each other this weekend. They'll match up with each other next weekend, in our final scrimmage runs. So, but I think there's a lot of options, and there's even guys that I've, that are sort of like a wild card for me. I'm giving them chances to start, like an opener. I'm putting them in the back of the bullpen. So I'm trying to expose these guys to everything that they could get thrown at, throughout the year. But to answer your question, Jody, yes, I like the pieces and the options that we have.
What have you seen with Jake since he got here?
It's an athletic kid, really talented kid, good arm, good working arm. He's a really good mover, efficient mover on the mound. The stuff is really good. Obviously there's velocity there. There's a real feel to spin the ball, 2 different breaking balls, slider and curve. The changeup can be really plus at times. We added a 2-seamer with him back in the fall because we felt like he needed a fastball that acted different than his 4-seamer, gave him another weapon, and he really seemed to take off on the back end of the fall after we did that. He's continued to throw that this spring. So, and he's a really good kid, like most of our kids are, well grounded, work hard, buy into the program. So I've been pleased with, he started slow in the fall, but then he really came on middle to late, was really excellent for us. So very pleased with Jake being here, obviously.
You mentioned Tag. What are you seeing from him, from not just from the pitching standpoint, but how he's handling that workload of the demands of being on the mound, what he does at first, and obviously what he can do at the plate?
Yeah, he's still learning that part of the process pitching wise. I think that's still an area that he has to figure out, working with Josh, our trainer, working with Nico, the strength coach, myself being involved. So we're still trying to figure out those pieces, but because if we're going to lean on you a little more, you got to take a little better care of your arm. You got to manage your arm a little better. You got to make sure you're doing prehab stuff in the training room, things that you need to do to recover more efficiently. But from the performance standpoint, he just looked to me like in the fall, he repeated his delivery better. He threw a lot more strikes than he did in the past. I mean, it was 93, 94 with a lot of sink, wipeout slider at times. So if you look at Taig's raw stuff, I mean, it jumps off the table to you, as good as anybody we have. So the pitchability just went up so much. I've been in his ear all fall and in the spring, like you can be a major contributor on this pitching staff. Yeah, you have to play first every day, swing the bat, but a couple of times a week, when we need you in some high leverage situations, I'd like to see you be available. And that's how well he pitched this fall for us, to make me believe he could do that for us.
You mentioned last year's freshman group now making the jump to sophomore. What about this year's freshman group? You've got some guys that have some pretty big time resumes coming into college.
Yeah, really good class. Obviously, learning their way, have to make the adjustments to college baseball, the speed of the game, holding runners, being able to move your stuff around the strike zone, that kind of thing. We saw some good glimpses out of that group in the fall. Obviously, the 2 big talented righties probably stand out the most. Brandon Shannon's. I say Brand. I'm not going to try to put him in that category yet because he's, it's his first year and he's in the spring. But there are comps to me with Brandon Shannon to Forbes in the world of it's the same body type. Loose athletic arm, quick arm, high velocity kid. And every time I watch him, there's some similarities there in what they did and where Pat was as a freshman. So it'll be fun to watch the evolution of Brandon Shannon, and he's made some progress. And that's a big arm that can help us. Zane Stahl was the other kid that made some big jumps in the fall. You get some big velocity out of him at times, but it also drop off fast. So we're trying to make sure delivery-wise and repeating that, what's the missing link there that can help him do that a little more consistently. Even some local kids. Nick Ballard did some good stuff for us in the fall as a freshman, showed a plus changeup. Probably, did more than I was expecting as a freshman in the fall. Some good looks there. And then there's a couple, a kid like Joe Olson we didn't get to see in the fall because he's coming back from rehab, but his first scrimmage was very encouraging when he threw out here, and he's a guy I've always thought from a competitive standpoint was made all the right stuff. And there's other guys obviously, but just to name a few. But I'm pleased with the progress of that group, and I think our older guys, the Wyatts of the world, the Peter Michaels, even the young sophomores, the Schweitzers and Eberleys, they're doing a great job of bringing those kids along and showing them, the way we do things. That's been that's been good to watch those guys kind of adapt to that and let them lead the way for them.
What do you what do you expect from Wyatt?
Well, obviously he was a huge bullpen piece for us last year. Swing and miss ability, fastball plays up, can spin the ball, good breaking stuff. And that was, like I said, those guys I mentioned earlier, man, we just leaned on those guys so much down the stretch. But this year, he is trained exclusively to try to become a starter. And that was by design. Wyatt, I don't need to see pitch out of the bullpen. I've watched him do that. He did it all last year, did it exceptionally well in my opinion. And so he knows the ropes in that world in preparing as a reliever. So I just told him, let's really try to devote time to seeing if the starter thing will play out. And it's been, I'd say, more on the positive end so far. It's different because as a starter, you can't throw 40 pitches in 2 innings and be out there. You have the pitchability has to go up. Wyatt knows that. My pitchability has to go up. I've got to do some things a little better than I can do as a reliever to be out there longer. He's working on that. Pleased with his progress, and I think it's still to be determined, where that can shake out. And look, if you look at his fall numbers as a starter, they were pretty good. Better than what I thought, when I was, thinking about the pitchability part of it. So, he's still in the mix for that, but if he doesn't get in there for some reason, again, you have a veteran bullpen arm you can put back in the back of the bullpen that is very reliable and can help you.
First weeks of the season, obviously the goal is to get some W's, but as a pitching coach and looking at the rotation, is it trying to get as many guys in situations that you can to learn? What's the mix there? How do you do that?
Well, we've always done that, to a degree because the starters are limited anyway. Out of the gate, there's a limit on how much they can give you. So you're trying to get different guys in the game and see who can do what, but at the same time, you're trying to win the game. So, so I think there's going to be, we have enough guys that have performed well enough for us to be confident about that we can use in different situations. And, hopefully we'll be covered on that end early and we're still trying to figure some things out. Usually every year, even the years where we've had the, bona fide starters like the Reed Detmers and Bobby Millers, like you're still trying to figure out some pieces, and it usually takes you maybe those first 10 to 15 games to kind of figure out, okay, this is where this guy's going to need to slide. We get into conference play, that kind of thing. So, but I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited about what these guys are going to be able to do and the matchups we can create and the right-left balance that we have, so it should be fun.
You talked about, Tag and wanting to potentially use him a couple times a week, maybe in some high leverage situations, but also talked about like trying to take care of his arm. How difficult is that with him playing first base, with him trying to make sure he gets a proper warm up down the bullpen, those type of things? How difficult is that for you to manage as the game's going on?
Yeah, it's really not that hard because we've had so many guys that have done it before. McKay, obviously he's a Friday night starter, but he plays first. Cole Sturgeon was an exceptional two-way guy for us, high leverage reliever. So we've obviously had a ton of them. And, myself, Coach Mack, Eric, Ray, we've all coached a lot of two-way guys. So usually the throwing part of it kind of fall on my shoulders, like control what kind of throwing they're doing. There are days where you can take ground balls and throw the ball across the infield and make all the throws. There's days maybe you just field a ground ball and drop it in a bucket and don't throw. There's days you have to devote to being a pitcher that day, a bullpen day, maybe a drill day, whatever. So it's usually we can coordinate that together and it's pretty easy. But as the player, where Brendan McKay so well and a lot of other guys, you have to kind of know your limitations and take ownership of my arm, Karen, what I need to do to be ready to pitch, if we're going to lean on you a little bit more and that kind of thing. And like I said, I've been talking to Tate about that since the fall, so hopefully, there's buy-in on his end there. I think he's all in on, he realizes the talent, that he has, and, he has another avenue to really help this team, get to where we want to go. So, that's something that's evolving, but it's not it's really very, very manageable, when everybody's on the same page.
Roger, since you guys, speaking of where you guys want to go, since you guys have been here, the expectation has never changed to win a national championship or to get to Omaha and win a national championship. How do you guys keep it when the expectations outside are more this year, like than they were maybe last year? How do you keep inside everybody focused and working on getting to that goal?
Yeah, I think Dan does a great job with that, keeping these guys level-headed, not getting ahead of themselves. We still do the things we do. I mean, teach them life lessons, motivating players, keeping it not too high, not too low type of mentality. Be where your feet are. You don't look at the rankings. It's about your preparation, your work day to day, and getting ready to play the game, and you play. So obviously that's out there, and it's nice recognition for a program. It's been a really good program, strong program in college baseball. But just try to keep them level-headed and hungry, to play and perform at their best.
As a veteran coach, though, when you get a taste again last year like you did, it even for you guys, doesn't it? It makes you want it even more, doesn't it?
Sure. I mean, to get back, to the promised land and get back to Omaha and watch what our guys did down the stretch and take us on that fun ride again. Obviously, yeah, it makes you hungrier to want to get back and do better and stay around longer. And we've been very close a couple of times. I guess finishing third a couple of times now in the country, being out there. So, we just need to, knock down that final piece and break through. And, just definitely, we feel like it can happen for us in this program. We've always all felt that all the time. So it's just making that last little bit of headway, getting through the finish line.
In terms of like continuity, like with the staff, or what even the expectations are for pitchers, how big has it been to have even a guy like Cam Robinson that's gone through here and now is helping out with pitchers and things like that? How much does that help those kids?
It's awesome. It's awesome to have Cam back again. Jalen Borders, Mike Allman, our player development guy. Gruber's been here several years now. Nico's still new, but when people ask me about last year, I give a ton of credit to Nico and Josh for keeping our guys healthy in the world of recovery. As a coach, I'm looking at how is stuff holding up, how our guys performing. This guy looked like he has nothing left, and you didn't see that out of that group last year. They were their best the last month of the season, so I give those two guys a lot of credit for that, and that's been a staple of our program. But having Cam back is huge. He knows the program, knows our system, knows me, knows my expectations for the pitching staff. I'm trying to give him more and more, responsibility this year because I trust him. He has a great relationship and feel for our guys. I think they believe in him. So, and at the end of the day, when your players know that all the coaches are on the same page, that's a huge help.
All right, guys.